Hello, book enthusiasts, and welcome to Listen with Best Audiobooks. All our audiobooks are originally written, produced, and narrated by us. We don't reuse or repurpose third-party content. Every script, voice, and edit is made exclusively for this channel. Now, sit back, relax, and let's begin today's audiobook.
There are people who speak, and rooms go quiet. People who walk into conversations and change the tone without force, without noise, without trying too hard. Their words don't just communicate, they connect. That kind of power isn't born, it's built, and it starts with understanding the hidden forces behind every conversation, every silence, every reaction. Welcome to Master Communication Skills, a journey into the psychology, rhythm, and emotional mastery behind unforgettable conversations. This isn't about sounding smarter, it's about becoming undeniable. Whether you're speaking to one person or a crowd, whether you're shy or outspoken, these chapters will transform how people experience your presence and remember your words. If you're ready to unlock the kind of communication that moves people, not just informs them, you're in the right place. And if you want more human-centered audiobooks like this crafted for growth mindset and mastery, subscribe now so you never miss what's next. Let's begin Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The first impression you never knew you were making. Before a word leaves your mouth, the conversation has already begun. It happens in a heartbeat, the way your eyes move, the way your shoulders settle, the rhythm of your breath. You step into a room, and whether you realize it or not, people are already drawing conclusions. They're reading signals, absorbing your presence like sunlight through glass. The world is listening to you before you ever speak. First impressions aren't just about what you say, they're about what you show. They're about what your energy whispers when your mouth is still silent. There was a man once who walked into every meeting as though he already owned the outcome, not because he was arrogant, but because he understood something most people don't. Confidence isn't declared, it's felt. He had this quiet calm that didn't scream for attention. It didn't need to. His presence did the talking. People listened, even when he wasn't saying much. That's the level of communication this chapter is about. The kind that happens before the words, the kind you build from the inside out. We grow up thinking communication starts with our mouths, but it doesn't. It starts with presence. Your presence tells a story long before your sentences do. It tells people whether you're safe to trust, whether you're worth their attention, whether you know who you are. When someone walks into a room hunched, jittery, or frantic with their phone, that's a message. When someone sits still, leans in slightly, and makes eye contact with no rush, that's also a message. One of the greatest secrets of powerful communication is this: your body is always talking, even in silence. Most people focus so much on what to say that they forget to control what they're already saying through their posture, tone, eye movement, and energy. That's why the first impression you make is often the one you never knew you were making. There was a woman once, quiet, small in stature, soft-spoken, but when she entered a room, people looked up. She didn't dress loudly. She didn't smile too much or too little. She didn't shrink either. She just stood there, like someone who had nothing to prove, and in that stillness there was power. It was her calm that drew people in, not her volume. What people often misunderstand is this: communication isn't just speaking, it's the art of being understood. And to be understood, you first have to know who you are, because people don't respond to what you say, they respond to who they feel you are. That's why self-awareness is the first real step to mastering communication. You must become fluent in your own inner state, your beliefs, your emotions, your insecurities, because every single one of them leaks through. If you're insecure, you'll overcompensate. If you're unsure, you'll sound rehearsed. If you're desperate to be liked, you'll speak like someone trying to survive. But when you know who you are, deeply, clearly, without apology, your communication becomes clean. It stops being about proving and starts being about sharing. You stop performing, you start connecting. We live in a noisy world. People don't remember noise, they remember clarity. They remember presence. And more than anything, they remember how someone made them feel. That's your power. It always has been. You don't need more impressive words. You need to feel safe in your own skin when you say the simplest ones. We often think the first impression is about being perfect, but that's a lie. It's about being centered. When you walk into a room, your mind needs to be with you. Not racing to the future, not replaying the past, but with you. That's presence. That's what people feel. It's why some people walk in and light up a space. They're not necessarily the smartest or the best dressed. They're just whole in that moment. Unscattered. Collected. Alive. They've learned how to arrive fully. And that's magnetic. So how do you begin building that kind of impression? You start by slowing down. Slow your breath. Slow your movement. Before you speak, pause. Let silence stretch. Let it settle into your bones. Because in that silence, you'll feel what's real. And so will everyone else. And when you speak, don't rush it. Let your words land. Let your voice breathe. People don't remember speed. They remember sincerity. One of the most persuasive people I ever met rarely spoke in long monologues. He simply made space. He looked you in the eye. He asked one thoughtful question. And then he listened. That was his superpower. Listening. And yet, everyone said he was an incredible speaker. Why? Because when he did speak, people felt it. They knew he wasn't saying it to impress. He was saying it to connect. He had nothing to prove. Only something to offer. That's the essence of great communication. Not proving, but offering. Most people are so busy trying to win approval that they forget the real goal of speaking is to create understanding, and understanding doesn't need polish. It needs truth. When you speak from truth, people lean in. But you can't speak from truth if you don't live in it. So here's where the real work begins. Not with your voice, but with your inner world. What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about others? Do you see communication as a battle or a bridge? Are you speaking to protect yourself or to reach someone? Because whatever story you're carrying inside will leak out into your tone, your pauses, your phrasing, your posture. You can't fake it. Not for long. That's why mastering communication is a journey of mastering yourself. It's about becoming aware of the energy you carry. It's about releasing the fear that keeps your voice tight. It's about walking into conversations not with the need to dominate, but with the courage to be clear and kind. Clarity is strength, and kindness is courage. If you can show up with both, you will not be ignored. People will remember your presence long after they've forgotten your words. They'll remember the way your calm settled their anxiety, the way your eye contact made them feel seen, the way your stillness reminded them to slow down and be human again. And that's the gift of great communicators. They remind the world what it feels like to be human. So if you want to make a powerful first impression, don't focus on being impressive. Focus on being real, present, grounded. Because in the end, communication isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the clearest soul in the room. Let that be the impression you leave behind, one of depth, calm, and undeniable presence. You don't need a script for that. You just need to show up fully. The world will feel it, and they'll remember you, not for what you said, but for how you made them feel. Chapter 2. The silent influence of listening deeply. That kind of silence is powerful, but very few people know how to hold it. There's a kind of silence that speaks louder than noise. The kind of silence that makes people feel safe enough to say what they never planned to say. It's not the kind that makes a room awkward or heavy. It's the kind that feels warm, open, like the door to a cabin in the middle of winter. The kind of silence that says, I'm here, I'm listening, you matter. There was once a young man who thought he was a great communicator because he always had something clever to say. People laughed at his jokes. They nodded at his theories. He could dominate a room with ease. But deep down, People didn't feel seen by him. They admired him. Yes, but they didn't feel safe around him, because every conversation felt like a performance, a test, a stage. In the world of communication, we often think the speaker holds the power, the one who commands attention, the one whose voice fills the air. But the truth is, the listener holds the real power, because it's the listener who gives meaning to the speaker's words, and it's the listener who creates the space for those words to even exist. Listening is not a passive act. It's not what happens when your mouth is closed and your eyes are open. It's not waiting your turn to talk. It's not nodding while planning your next sentence. Listening, real listening, is active presence. It's focus without judgment. It's the willingness to receive without controlling, without fixing, without filtering every word through your own perspective. That's the secret no one tells you. Great communicators are not full of words, they are full of space. Then one day something changed. He stopped trying to be impressive. He started sitting in conversations with less urgency. He asked fewer questions. He gave more pauses. He let people speak until their voices softened, until their shoulders dropped, until the story they were telling became real, and suddenly people started trusting him, coming to him, opening up to him. Not because he had become more interesting, but because he had become more empty, more present, more available. They create space for others to be honest. They hold space for confusion, for vulnerability, for silence. And in that space, connection happens. That's why deep listening is the foundation of all persuasive communication. Because you cannot influence someone if you don't first understand them. When someone listens to you deeply, really listens, it changes something inside you. It softens you. It grounds you. It tells you that your words matter. And when people feel that, they open up. They reveal more. They drop their guard. They trust. And you cannot understand someone if you're too busy trying to be understood. So the first step in mastering your communication isn't to speak louder or clearer or smarter. It's to listen longer, deeper, slower. To listen not just to what someone says, but to how they say it. To listen for the tremble in their voice, the hesitation in their words, the emotion beneath their logic. Most people miss the real message because they're listening for facts. But people don't speak in facts, they speak in feeling. Even when they're trying not to, especially when they're trying not to. A father says, "I just want you to be realistic," but what he means is, "I'm scared you'll fail." A coworker says, "It's not personal," but their silence says, "It hurt." A friend says, "I'm fine," but her eyes say, "Please don't leave me alone." If you listen closely, beneath the tone, between the pauses, you'll start hearing the truth. People are too afraid to say. That's where the magic lives. That's where trust begins. And that's where your power as a communicator grows. There's something sacred about being heard. Not just listened to, but heard, fully, without interruption, without judgment, without agenda. Because when people feel seen, they stop resisting. They stop performing. They start showing up. And if you're the kind of person who creates that kind of safety, your words will carry weight even when you say very little. It requires that you slow down. But that kind of listening requires something from you. It requires that you suspend your ego. It requires that you become more curious than controlling. You can't listen deeply if you're trying to fix. You can't listen deeply if you're trying to win. You have to be willing to sit in the unknown, to feel the discomfort of silence, to allow someone else's story to unfold without shaping it to match your own. You can't listen deeply if you already think you know. And that's hard. Because we've been trained to believe that communication is about control, that it's about getting your point across, making people agree with you, convincing them to see things your way. But that kind of communication doesn't build bridges. It builds walls. They anchor the room. The most persuasive minds don't control the room. They become the calm center that invites honesty. They don't rush people to answers. They make space for real reflection. And in that stillness, transformation happens. Because people don't change when they're being argued with. They change when they feel seen. And that starts with how you listen. Don't plan your reply. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation, pause. Don't fill the silence. Just be there. Let the moment breathe fully. Let the other person breathe. Because inside that space, you are saying something powerful without saying a word. I'm here. I see you. I'm listening. And that message will travel deeper than any advice or argument ever could. People will remember how you made them feel. They will remember the way you looked at them, the way you waited, and they'll come back to you, not for answers but for presence. The way you didn't flinch when the truth got messy. That's the real power of listening. It doesn't just change conversations. It changes relationships. It changes lives. And it starts with one quiet choice: to stop speaking and start hearing. Chapter 3. Energy speaks before words are ever heard. Before a single word leaves your mouth, you're already communicating. The way you walk into a room, the way your shoulders rest or stay tense, the way your eyes meet someone's gaze or avoid it altogether, these things say everything long before you open your lips. This is the part of communication that most people overlook. They prepare their speeches, they rehearse their responses, they practice the right thing to say. But none of that matters if your energy says something else entirely. You can't fake presence. You can't pretend confidence. You can't hide fear behind a smile that doesn't reach your eyes. People read you before they hear you. And if they don't feel safe, they won't listen. This is why the most persuasive communicators don't just use their voice, they use their being. They speak with their body, with their breath, with their energy. They understand that communication is not just about what's said, it's about how it's felt. Imagine someone walking into a meeting. They don't say much, but something about the way they move, the way they stand, the way they take up space without forcing it, makes people sit up straighter, pay attention, adjust themselves. That person hasn't even started talking, but already the room has shifted. That's not dominance, that's energetic leadership. You don't have to be loud to have presence, you just have to be aligned. When your words, actions, and energy are in sync, people feel it. And when people feel it, they trust you, without needing to know why. That trust isn't built through information. It's built through vibration. People are drawn to those who feel grounded, those who carry a sense of calm strength, a quiet kind of certainty, not the kind that demands the spotlight, but the kind that becomes the center of gravity in the room. It's not about charisma, it's about congruence. The nervous speaker who tries to sound confident, but their hands won't stop shaking. The audience picks up on that. The leader who says everything's fine, while their face is tight with stress. People feel that. You can't hide energy, you can only manage it. And the most powerful communicators manage it masterfully. They arrive before they speak. They prepare not just their message, but their state. They breathe deeply. They anchor themselves. They check in with their emotions. They make sure they are coming from a place of clarity, not chaos. From presence, not panic. This is why athletes visualize before a game, why performers do breathing exercises backstage, why some people meditate before big meetings, because how you feel is the message behind your message. It leaks into your posture, into your pace, into your tone. You don't have to say you're confident if your presence already speaks it. You don't have to say you're trustworthy if your energy already calms the room. People are more intuitive than they realize. They may not be able to explain it, but they know when something's off. They know when someone's smile is real or forced. They know when a compliment is genuine or coated in something sticky. They can tell when you're fully with them or just going through the motions. This is where most communication breaks down, not in the content but in the disconnect between what's said and what's felt. You can't master communication until you master your own nervous system, because your words ride on the back of your state, And if your state is scrambled, anxious, defensive, or desperate, your words will carry that, no matter how polished they sound. So what does that mean for you? It means slowing down enough to feel your own body before you speak. It means asking yourself, not just what am I trying to say, but what am I bringing into this space? Because your presence is the first message, your breath is the first sentence, and your silence is often louder than your speech. Some people walk into a conversation with frantic energy. Everything they say feels rushed, panicked, disconnected, and you can feel it in your chest. Your own breath shortens around them. You find yourself trying to make them feel okay so you can feel okay. Others walk in with deep presence. They make eye contact not to control, but to connect. They don't rush their words. They give space between sentences, and just being around them makes your shoulders drop, your mind slow down, your heart open. This isn't about pretending to be calm. It's about becoming calm. It's not about performing connection. It's about embodying it. You can't fake it, but you can cultivate it. You can train yourself to return to your center, to breathe when you feel scattered, to notice your tension and release it, to step into conversations not to impress, but to connect. And that shift, subtle as it may seem, changes everything. Because communication is not a transaction. It's not the delivery of information. It's an exchange of energy. It's one nervous system meeting another. And if you want to be heard, if you want to be trusted, if you want your words to land, you have to start with your state. Speak from groundedness. Speak from clarity. Speak from compassion. Let your body match your message. Let your presence speak before your words ever do. Because when your energy and your words are aligned, you become unforgettable. You may not be the loudest. You may not say the most clever thing, but people will remember how they felt in your presence. And that feeling, that calm, grounded, honest energy, is what makes communication stick. It's what makes you persuasive without pushing. It's what makes people lean in, not pull away. It's what makes your voice carry weight, even in silence. And it all begins not with what you say, but with how you show up. Chapter 4. Listening so deeply it transforms the room. True communication does not begin with speaking. It begins with listening. And not just hearing the words someone says, but tuning into the meaning behind them. The tone, the pauses, the silences, the struggle between what's said and what's withheld. This kind of listening isn't passive. It's not just sitting in silence while waiting for your turn to talk. It's an active, intentional act of connection. When someone speaks and truly feels heard, something powerful happens. Their walls begin to fall. Their body loosens. Their words become more honest. They start to reveal things even they didn't know were buried beneath the surface. But that only happens when the listener creates a space safe enough for those words to land, without judgment, without interruption, and without agenda. Most people don't listen. They prepare, they calculate, they wait, they nod at the right time. But inside, they're already crafting their next sentence. That kind of listening doesn't build trust. It builds performance. And performance makes people high. The best communicators understand that the most powerful person in the room is often the one who speaks the least, but listens the deepest. They hold silence like it's sacred. They let words breathe. They don't rush to fill the gap. They don't finish other people's sentences. They don't compete for airtime. They witness the speaker, fully and patiently. This isn't a strategy. It's a presence. When you listen deeply, you're not just hearing what someone says. You're reading their nervous system. You're picking up on hesitation. You're noticing what makes their voice shake or slow down. You're paying attention to the moments when their confidence cracks or their vulnerability leaks out. And when you respond, not with advice, not with solutions, but with reflection, with care, with space, they open up even more. That's how transformation begins. People walk through life longing to be seen, to be understood, to be known. And yet, they've been dismissed so many times that they start shrinking their voice to fit into smaller and safer containers. So when they finally encounter someone who listens like they matter, it changes everything. It's not the words you say that shift the atmosphere, it's the way you make people feel seen without trying to fix them. This is where trust lives. And trust is the foundation of every great conversation, every great negotiation, every great relationship. Because trust doesn't grow in volume. It grows in silence, in patience, in presence. Imagine sitting across from someone who doesn't interrupt you, who doesn't try to impress you, who isn't waiting for a moment to turn the attention back to themselves. They're just there, still, present, with you, listening not just to your words but to your being. That kind of presence is rare, but when it shows up, it's unforgettable. That's what the most persuasive minds do. They don't dominate, they draw in. They make people feel safe enough to say what they really think, and once that truth is on the table, they guide it, shape it, influence it, not through force, but through respect. Because influence doesn't require shouting. It requires understanding. And understanding begins with listening so deeply, the other person starts to hear themselves more clearly just by being around you. It's in the pause after they speak, when you don't immediately respond, but let their words echo for a second longer. It's in the nod that isn't performative, but genuine. It's in the way you stay quiet even when you disagree because you value the connection more than the need to be right. This kind of listening is magnetic. It makes people lean in. It makes them curious about what you think, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. They know that when you finally speak, it's going to matter, because you weren't speaking to hear yourself, you were speaking because you heard them. That is the essence of powerful communication. It's not about being the smartest voice in the room. It's about becoming the quietest mirror, the one who reflects truth back to the speaker so they can see their own ideas more clearly. You don't have to agree with everything you hear, but if you want to change minds, you have to hold space for those minds to unfold in your presence. And that space isn't built with clever arguments, it's built with genuine attention. When you give someone your full attention, without distractions, without ego, you're giving them a gift most people rarely receive. In a world addicted to noise, you become the one who listens, and that makes your voice powerful, not because it's loud, but because it's earned. You become the one people call when they're unsure, the one they trust when they feel exposed, the one they return to, not for answers, but for clarity. And when you do speak, your words carry a kind of weight that others don't, because your silence already said everything about who you are. This is how great leaders operate. They speak less, listen more, and act from understanding. They don't enter conversations to win, they enter to learn. And in doing so, they become impossible to ignore. Because nothing is more persuasive than being heard. Not just listened to, but felt. And that begins not with technique, but with intention. The next time someone speaks to you, don't just hear the surface. Tune in, watch the eyes, listen to the breath, feel the rhythm. Let their energy guide your response. And when you finally speak, let your words come from the stillness you created between you, not from the noise inside your head. That is where true communication lives. Not in the mouth, but in the space between hearts. And those who master that space, master everything. Chapter 5. Speak with authority, not volume. Authority doesn't come from how loud your voice is, it comes from how grounded you are when you speak. Real authority doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to dominate the room. It emerges from clarity, conviction, and presence. The most persuasive minds in the world know this. They don't rely on force, they rely on resonance. And the deeper your voice is anchored in who you are and what you know, the more people naturally lean in to listen. There's a subtle difference between someone who's trying to sound confident and someone who actually is. One feels like performance, the other feels like power. The performer pushes, the powerful one stands still. People can sense it. You don't need to explain yourself over and over when your energy already communicates certainty. Speaking with authority doesn't mean having all the answers. It means being deeply familiar with your subject, and even more deeply rooted in your intention. When people speak with scattered energy, it shows their thoughts dart around. Their voice lifts at the end of sentences, as if asking for permission. But when someone speaks from grounded clarity, their words land like weight. They don't bounce. They don't evaporate. They stay in the room. Think of someone like Martin Luther King Jr. He didn't scream, he declared. Every word came from a place inside that had been tested, broken, rebuilt, and deepened. He didn't demand attention. His silence before he spoke often held more tension than the loudest man in the crowd. That's because real communicators understand something most people overlook. Stillness is more powerful than noise. People don't remember everything you say, but they remember how you said it. They remember the calm steadiness of your tone when others were flustered. They remember that you didn't flinch when challenged, that you didn't escalate when provoked, that you remained composed, not to appear superior, but because your message mattered more than your ego. This is where true authority lives. It's built in the hours you spent learning when no one was watching, in the courage to say, "I don't know," when others bluff, in the willingness to pause rather than ramble, in the way you make silence your ally rather than your enemy. Insecure speakers talk to fill space. Confident speakers command space. They don't compete for airtime. They shape the energy of the room through rhythm, tone, pacing. Their pauses are deliberate. Their words are not rushed. They understand that speed weakens the spine of a message, so they slow down, not to drag, but to allow every idea to sink, to anchor, to ripple. Authority also shows in body language. You don't need dramatic gestures. A steady gaze, an open posture, a relaxed presence. All these things tell the audience, "I belong here." And once they believe you believe that, they begin to trust you, even before you prove your point. That's the paradox. Confidence is quiet. It doesn't parade itself. It doesn't beg for validation. It simply is. And because it is, it doesn't have to chase approval. It attracts it naturally. People often mistake aggression for strength. But aggression comes from fear. Fear of being ignored, being dismissed, being overshadowed. True power doesn't fight for attention. It receives it. And this is the shift every great communicator makes at some point. They stop performing and start expressing. They stop trying to sound impressive and start sounding real. That shift alone changes everything, because now they're not worried about how they're perceived. They're committed to what needs to be said. The audience can sense this. When a speaker talks from their center, when their words rise from a place of inner truth and not external pressure, people listen, not because they're being told to, but because they want to, because there's something undeniably compelling about someone who stands in the storm of opinion and does not sway. They don't speak to win. They speak to connect, to reveal, and in that invitation, they unlock something ancient in the human brain, the recognition of genuine leadership. It's not flashy. It's not dramatic. It's steady. And that steadiness, in a world filled with noise, becomes a lighthouse. If you want to speak with more authority, start by checking your intention. Are you speaking to prove something, or to share something? Are you reacting to insecurity, or responding from insight? Then slow down. Feel the ground beneath your words. Let your breath guide the rhythm. Don't rush to fill silences. Let them do their work. Don't fear repetition. Use it when needed. Let your message circle back and reinforce itself, not through volume, but through clarity and presence. And above all, don't underestimate the power of being still when you speak. Stillness is not absence of movement. It's presence without panic. And when you speak from stillness, the room stills with you. That's what the great communicators know. They don't try to be loud. They make silence louder. And in that silence, their words shine. Their authority doesn't come from having the final word. It comes from saying the right word, at the right time, in the right tone, and walking away with nothing more to prove. Because they know the strongest voice isn't the one people fear, it's the one they feel. And once people feel your words, they don't forget them. They carry them. Chapter 6. Emotional intelligence in every word you say. The words we speak are just the surface. Underneath them lies a deeper current emotion. And it's not just about what you say, it's about how the other person feels when you say it. This is where emotional intelligence becomes the silent engine of masterful communication. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic, but it changes everything. There are people who can walk into a room and speak for 20 minutes without losing anyone's attention. They don't just talk, they connect. And the secret is never in their vocabulary, it's in their emotional awareness. They read the room before speaking. They listen before they reply. They feel before they form their words. Because when your words carry emotional intelligence, they carry depth, and that depth cuts through the noise. Communication is not simply the transfer of data. It's the transfer of feeling, and if people don't feel understood, they won't truly listen. The most persuasive communicators in the world have mastered the art of empathy. They don't just speak to you, they speak with you. Even if they don't agree with you, you feel seen. That's the foundation of trust. And trust is what turns ordinary communication into unforgettable influence. To develop emotional intelligence in your speech, you must first become emotionally intelligent in your life. Pay attention to your reactions. Catch yourself in moments of frustration. Watch what triggers defensiveness. Learn how to regulate your emotional temperature before it rises too high. Because people who communicate from a dysregulated emotional state often regret the things they say. Their tone hardens. Their timing becomes poor. Their choice of words becomes reactive instead of intentional. But those who carry calm, self-aware energy into conversations, those people become the anchors in chaotic rooms. They calm the storm instead of becoming it. And it starts with listening, real listening. Not the kind where you're just waiting for your turn to talk, but the kind where you slow down, breathe, and allow yourself to feel the message behind someone's words. There are always two conversations happening at once, the verbal and the emotional. The first is easy to hear, the second requires presence. The second demands silence. If you want to master communication, you must learn how to hear what's not being said. Listen for tension. Listen for fear. Listen for hope behind hesitation. When someone pauses or changes their tone, it's not an accident. Emotion leaves fingerprints on communication. Pay attention to those. A person with emotional intelligence doesn't speak to prove they're right. They speak to create safety. Safety opens people up. It disarms resistance. It makes people feel like they can tell you the truth without fear. And that is when real conversations begin, not before. That's why people with high emotional intelligence often feel magnetic. You can't always explain it, but when they speak, you listen. You want to listen, because they don't force you. They draw you in. They understand timing. They don't interrupt. They don't rush. They wait. They see you, and that creates space. In a world where everyone is fighting to be heard, the person who listens becomes the most powerful one in the room. That's the paradox of emotional intelligence. The less you push, the more people open up. You become a mirror for their emotional state. You reflect, not distort. You validate without enabling. You empathize without absorbing, and that balance of strength and softness is what transforms conversations. Think of great therapists. They rarely speak the most in the room. But when they do, their words feel like arrows hitting the center of the target. Why? Because they've been observing, feeling, sensing. And when they do speak, their words come from precision, not pressure. This same power exists in everyday communication. When you talk to your team at work, When you have hard conversations with your family, when you offer feedback to a friend, or when you're presenting to a room full of strangers. Emotional intelligence is the hidden thread that turns friction into flow. And it doesn't require a degree. It requires humility. It requires attention. It requires you to let go of the need to win the conversation and instead focus on serving it. When you're emotionally intelligent, you speak with the moment, not against it. You notice when someone flinches at a word, and you soften your tone. You sense when a person is disengaging, and you shift your energy. You feel when silence is necessary, and you honor it. These subtle adjustments change the emotional climate of every conversation you're in. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. You just have to tune into the emotional frequency of the person across from you. That's how you build resonance. Resonance creates remembering. People don't remember facts as much as they remember how they felt around those facts. They may forget your exact words, but they won't forget that you made them feel understood. And that, right there, is influence. Influence is not manipulation. It's not about controlling how people think. It's about creating space where people want to listen because they trust your intent. And that trust doesn't come from charisma. It comes from consistency. When your words and your emotions match, when there's alignment, people sense that. It gives your voice credibility. And in a world of surface talk, credibility is rare. So speak like someone who respects the emotional landscape of others. Pause before responding to a heated comment. Acknowledge the fear behind someone's defensiveness. Offer softness where the world offers sharpness. And most importantly, tune into your own emotions before trying to guide someone else's. Because if you can't hear yourself, you won't hear them. Emotional intelligence isn't a skill you master in a day. It's a lifelong conversation with yourself and with every human being you meet. And the better you become at that conversation, the more powerful your words become. Not because they're perfect, but because they're real. And that reality is what makes communication unforgettable. Not the grammar, not the volume, not the vocabulary, the emotional truth behind the words. That's where the real power lives. And that's the voice people remember long after the conversation ends. Chapter 7. How to read people without them saying a word. You can't always trust what people say, but you can almost always trust what they show. That's the difference between listening with your ears and listening with your eyes. Master communicators do both, because they know communication starts long before a single word is spoken. When someone walks into a room, they're already communicating. Their shoulders, their eyes, their breathing, their pace, all of it sends signals. These are the quiet messages behind the loud ones, and most people miss them. They get so caught up in thinking about what they'll say next, they stop paying attention to what's happening right now. But when you learn how to observe instead of just react, you begin to unlock a different dimension of conversation. It's a soft power, a subtle kind of intelligence. This isn't about manipulation. It's about awareness. And the more aware you are, the more in control you become, not over others, but over how you respond to them. That response is what builds trust, connection, and lasting impact. Take eye contact. Most people think it's just about looking someone in the eyes, but real eye contact is about intention. Is the look warm or cold, curious or judgmental, inviting or confrontational? The eyes are only part of the message. The energy behind them tells the real story. Then there's body posture. Someone can say, "I'm fine," but their crossed arms and dropped shoulders say otherwise. People leak emotional truth through their body. You just have to learn how to read it. The most persuasive people in the world are not those who talk the most. They're the ones who watch the best. They notice the twitch of a lip, the shift in someone's seat, the glance toward the floor. These tiny cues tell you more about a person's state of mind than any sentence ever could. And when you pick up on that, you speak to who they are in that moment, not just the words they're saying. This creates real-time relevance. It makes the other person feel understood without even explaining themselves. That's power. Because in most conversations people are waiting to be seen. They're hoping someone will finally pick up on what they've been carrying silently. And when you do that without forcing it, just with your presence, it creates a bond that no fancy vocabulary ever could. But reading people isn't just about them. It starts with you. If you're not emotionally grounded, your perception will be clouded. You'll project your own fears onto others. You'll misread a pause as disapproval. You'll confuse discomfort with disrespect. But when you're centered, you become like a clear mirror. You reflect others accurately. So before you learn to read anyone else, learn to read yourself. Pay attention to your own breathing. Notice your tension. Watch your tone. Every emotion has a texture, and if you're not aware of it, it will leak into your words without permission. Once you've trained that inner awareness, you'll begin to sense shifts in others more naturally. You'll know when someone's agreement is fake. You'll feel when someone is overwhelmed. You'll see when someone wants to speak but doesn't know how to start. And when you do, you won't interrupt. You'll simply hold the space. That space is sacred. It's what allows trust to bloom. Now let's talk about pacing. Every person has a natural rhythm to how they communicate. Some move fast, some slow, some are expressive, others are reserved. If you want to connect, match their pace, not in a fake way, but as a gesture of attunement. This is called mirroring, and when done authentically, it creates a sense of familiarity. We trust what feels familiar. If you're speaking too fast to someone who processes slowly, they'll feel rushed and shut down. If you're too slow for someone who thinks quickly, they'll get frustrated. Master communicators read the tempo and adjust accordingly. This doesn't mean becoming someone you're not. It means having range. It means being versatile without losing authenticity. Think of it like music. A great musician can play in multiple keys and still sound like themselves. Tone of voice is another vital instrument. The same sentence can sound encouraging, sarcastic, dismissive, or warm depending on tone. People don't just hear your words, they feel your tone, and they remember it. The best communicators are tone-aware. They adjust not to manipulate, but to respect the moment. Silence is also communication. Sometimes, silence says more than a paragraph. It gives the other person space to speak. It shows you're not afraid of pause. Most people rush to fill silence because it feels awkward. But masters of communication use silence strategically. It can create tension, signal respect, or invite deeper sharing. Watch how people respond to silence. If they fidget, look down, or rush to speak, you know they're uncomfortable with emotional presence. That's useful data. It tells you where they are and how deep you can go. Reading people isn't about judging them. It's about meeting them where they are. This kind of awareness turns simple conversations into deep connections. You start noticing when someone's excitement drops, even if their smile stays. You recognize when someone is saying yes, but wanting to say no. You hear the edge of fear under a joke. You sense the fatigue behind someone's "I'm okay." And when you respond to that, not the mask but the truth behind it, you become unforgettable. People might not remember what you said, but they'll remember that you saw them. That's what makes communication powerful. That's what builds loyalty in business, love in relationships, and unity in teams. It's not about perfect grammar. It's not about sounding smart. It's about seeing people clearly and helping them feel seen. So train your awareness. Practice silence. Notice micro-expressions. Listen with your whole body. And remember, every person is communicating, even when they're not speaking. If you can learn to read the quietest signals, you'll never be confused in conversation again. You'll lead without shouting. You'll connect without trying. And most importantly, you'll become the kind of person people want to talk to. Not because you say all the right things, but because you understand what most people ignore. Chapter 8. The Unspoken Language of Presence. Some people walk into a room and immediately change the atmosphere. They don't even need to speak. There's a stillness around them, a quiet command. People turn to look, not because they're flashy, but because they carry something invisible. That invisible force is presence. You can't fake presence. You can't rush it. You can't pretend to have it with clever words or a loud voice. It's something that comes from within. It's the outcome of inner clarity, emotional stability, and self-respect. And it communicates louder than any spoken sentence. When someone has presence, you feel them before you hear them. They don't need to dominate. They don't need to convince. Their confidence doesn't look like arrogance. It looks like still water, deep, calm, and unshakable. People with presence don't interrupt. They don't fill every silence with sound. They don't beg for attention. They become it. So how do you develop this? It begins with awareness, not just of others, but of yourself. You must know what you're feeling, how you're carrying yourself, and what kind of energy you're projecting into the space. Because people pick up on that, even if they don't realize it. Your energy enters the room before your words do. This is where so many people get it wrong. They try to impress with words, while their body is screaming insecurity. They speak with big gestures but avoid eye contact. They act confident, but their feet shuffle and their voice wavers. That gap between how they feel and what they say creates static. The message doesn't land. The room senses the mismatch. But when your words and energy align, people listen. Not because they're forced to, but because they want to. True presence doesn't require performance. It requires congruence. When what you say matches how you say it and how you feel inside, it builds trust. People don't just hear you, they believe you. They feel safe around you. And in a world full of noise, that safety is magnetic. Now think about people who command a room without raising their voice. What makes them different? They are rooted, not rushed. They are anchored in themselves, not pulled around by everyone else's reactions. That calmness is contagious. It slows the room down. It opens space. It invites others to breathe easier and go deeper. But presence isn't about being the loudest or most charismatic. Sometimes the most present person is the quiet one, the one who's fully here. Not on their phone, not rehearsing their next line, not performing confidence. Just here in the moment, fully connected. That's rare. And that's why it's powerful. The most skilled communicators are not always the most talkative. They are the most present. They don't rush their words. They don't over-explain. They listen with their whole body. They wait. They respond, not react. They trust silence. And they make you feel like you're the only person in the room when they speak to you. Presence is a kind of attention. Not the attention you get from others, but the attention you give to this moment. And that attention shows in the smallest ways. It's in the way your eyes soften, instead of darting. It's in the way you lean in slightly when someone speaks. It's in the way your body is relaxed, not stiff or slouched. It's in your breathing, slow, grounded, not shallow or fast. These are not performance tricks, they're embodied signals. When you're calm, the room feels it. When you're nervous, the room feels that too. That's why nervous speakers often lose their audience in the first minute. It's not that they're saying the wrong thing. It's that their nervousness disconnects them from the room. Their voice tightens. Their pacing speeds up. They stop noticing the people in front of them, and the people in front of them stop noticing them. To build presence, you must train your body. Stand tall, shoulders back but relaxed, chin slightly lifted. Not in arrogance, but in openness. This posture tells your brain, I am here, I am steady, I am safe. Breathe low into your belly. Let your breath guide your rhythm. When you're nervous, you breathe fast and high. When you're grounded, your breath is slow and deep. That breathing controls your tone, your pause, your pace. Slow your movements. People who fidget constantly or over-gesture drain attention away from their message, but those who move intentionally draw attention to their message. Presence lives in intentionality. Speak from your center, not from your throat. When your voice comes from a grounded place, it resonates. It carries. It feels more truthful. And most importantly, listen more than you speak. Presence is not just about being heard. It's about hearing others so fully that they feel seen. When someone talks and you are fully there, no distractions, no agenda, they feel it. They may not say it, but they'll remember you, because very few people ever feel fully heard. That's why presence is so rare. It's not because it's hard. It's because it's disciplined. It requires you to be here, not just physically but emotionally, not just with your eyes but with your attention. Most people live in their heads. They're rehearsing what to say next. They're worrying about how they're being perceived. They're comparing, judging, preparing, performing. But presence is the opposite. It's the art of being so fully in this moment that you stop performing and start connecting. You don't need to say the perfect thing. You just need to be there, really there. People won't remember all your words, but they will remember how you made them feel. And that feeling comes not from fancy vocabulary, but from presence. So practice being fully here, in every conversation, in every meeting, in every silence. Hold the space. Anchor your breath. Listen with your eyes. Speak from your center. And trust this presence is more powerful than perfection. Because in a world full of distraction, the rarest thing is someone who is fully here. Chapter 9. How to be heard without shouting. Most people think they need to talk louder to be heard. They raise their voice. They exaggerate their tone. They stretch their sentences, hoping anyone will finally listen. But that's not how the most persuasive people communicate. They don't shout. They don't try to overpower the room. Instead, they know how to cut through the noise with calm, deliberate strength. You don't need volume to be heard. You need weight. And weight in communication comes from stillness, certainty, and strategic silence. When someone speaks quietly but with clarity, the room leans in. That's the paradox. The less you chase attention, the more it finds you. It begins with your intention. People who speak to be liked will always sound like they're performing. Their energy is scattered. They speak too fast. They fill silences with nervous sounds, and they often repeat themselves, not because they don't know what to say, but because they're trying to hold attention by force. But when you speak to deliver, not to please, everything changes. You're no longer attached to how people receive your message. You're focused only on making it land. That shift in energy is everything. Think about a courtroom. The most powerful lawyers don't yell. They pause. They walk slowly. They ask one question at a time. They let silence linger, because silence forces people to fill the space with attention. The same is true in communication. If you want to be heard, you must be okay with the quiet that follows your words. Let it sit. Let it echo. Let people digest it. Rushing to speak again only tells people, what I just said wasn't enough. But when you pause after a powerful statement, it says, that was enough. I trust it to land. The human brain craves rhythm. That's why music, poetry, and speeches stick with us. They have tempo, and persuasive speakers master the rhythm of conversation. They know when to slow down, when to emphasize, when to lower their voice instead of raising it. Because in the right moment, a whisper can cut deeper than a shout. This is how great communicators lead meetings, close deals, or inspire rooms. They own the pace. They don't let others rush them. And they never chase approval. They command attention, not demand it. And here's the truth. People trust calm. When your voice is calm, steady, and paced with confidence, it signals emotional control. It tells others, I'm not here to perform, I'm here to connect. That's rare, and that's why it works. Even in conflict, calm speech disarms chaos. When others yell and you stay grounded, your words carry more weight. People remember what you said after the noise fades. That's because communication is not just sound, it's energy. And when your energy is centered, your words become magnetic. You don't need to be charismatic. You need to be clear. Most people try to be interesting, but the most respected speakers aim to be understood. They say what they mean. They speak in simple language, and they don't add extra layers to impress others. That simplicity is powerful. Why? Because clarity is a gift. When you speak clearly, without fluff or filler, people feel safe. They don't have to guess what you mean. They don't have to read between the lines. They know exactly where you stand. And in communication, certainty is comfort. Now think about leaders you respect. They don't rush. They don't stammer. They speak like they believe every word, because they do. That belief is what gives their words strength. So how do you build that? First, slow down your thoughts. When your mind races, your mouth tries to catch up. That's when you lose rhythm. That's when you start over-talking, over-sharing, over-explaining. But when your thoughts are calm, your speech is precise. To slow your thoughts, breathe. Before you respond, pause. Even half a second helps. That breath gives your brain space. And in that space, you find clarity. You choose your words, not react with them. Second, practice speaking from your core, not your throat. When people are nervous, their voice goes higher. It tightens, but when you breathe into your belly and speak from your chest, your voice drops into a deeper register. That depth sounds more trustworthy, more grounded. Third, end your sentences. Too many people trail off when they speak. They say, you know, or right, at the end of every sentence, hoping for validation. But strong communicators close their sentences with confidence. Speak. Stop. Let it land. Every time you trail off, you weaken your message. Fourth, own your space. Don't shrink. Don't hunch. Don't cross your arms or fidget. Your body speaks before your mouth does. If you want to be heard, stand like you believe in what you're saying. Shoulders back, feet grounded, hands open. That posture sends a message. I'm steady. I'm not here to convince. I'm here to share something that matters. And lastly, don't talk all the time. People who speak constantly lose impact. But people who choose when to speak gain power. The less you speak, the more people listen when you do. That's the secret. Not shouting, not performing, but choosing your words like they cost something. Because they do. Every word you say shapes how others see you. So say less, but say it with presence. Say less, but mean every word. Say less, but let silence do the rest. Because in communication, power belongs to the person who needs to say the least to be heard the most. Chapter 10. How to influence people without manipulation. Real influence doesn't begin with words. It begins with presence. The way someone enters a room, the way they listen before they speak, the way they hold silence without flinching, that's where influence is born. People who command attention don't need to manipulate. They don't play games or twist stories to get their way. They understand something much deeper. People are moved not by force, but by resonance. You don't have to convince anyone when you speak in a way that makes people feel understood. That's the heart of true influence. It's not control, it's not trickery, it's connection. The most persuasive minds in the world don't talk at people. They talk with people. They don't push. They pull. They listen not to reply, but to uncover what matters to the other person. And then they speak into that need. It's an emotional dance, rooted in empathy, not strategy. When you influence with integrity, you're not selling. You're guiding. You're showing people what's already true inside them, then pointing a path forward. That's powerful. Because people don't follow logic. They follow feelings that feel true. And here's the part most people miss. To influence someone, you must be willing to walk away. Real influence comes from detachment, not from desperation. When you're desperate to be liked, approved, or chosen, you lose your edge. You start bending your words. You try too hard, and people feel that energy. But when you communicate from a place of grounded calm, when you don't need them to agree but you want them to see, you become magnetic. People trust those who don't need to be right. And that's where influence lives, not in dominance, not in debate, but in trust. Let's take it further. Influence is built in layers. The first layer is credibility. If people don't believe you, they won't follow you. That belief doesn't come from credentials, it comes from consistency. Say what you mean. Follow through. Don't overpromise. Don't shift with the wind. People remember what you do, not just what you say. And when your actions and words align, your voice gains power. The next layer is emotional intelligence. You can have the best ideas in the world, but if you lack emotional attunement, they'll fall flat. You must read the room. Feel the tension. Notice when someone pulls back. Know when to pause and when to push. Emotional intelligence doesn't mean being soft. It means being aware, and awareness allows you to guide conversations with precision, not pressure. The third layer is intent. People can smell selfish motives. If you're trying to influence just to gain something, whether status, money, or control, they'll shut down. But if your intent is clean, if you truly believe your message serves others, then your words carry a different weight. Influence, rooted in service, creates loyalty. People follow those who make them feel seen and valued. And finally, the deepest layer is belief. Not in yourself, but in the person you're speaking to. If you don't believe someone can change, grow, or rise, you'll never influence them. But when you speak to the highest version of someone, even if they haven't met that version yet, you awaken something inside them. And that's when transformation happens. Let's look at how this plays out in everyday life. Imagine a team leader addressing a room of tired employees. One version talks numbers, deadlines, and pressure. People hear it, but it doesn't land. Another version walks in and says, "I know you've been carrying a lot. I've seen the long nights. And I want you to know, none of it has gone unnoticed. We're not just hitting targets, we're building something that matters. And I'm here with you." That's influence. It meets people where they are, then lifts them to where they could be. It doesn't manipulate, it moves. Now think about relationships. You can't make someone love, respect, or understand you by talking louder or explaining more. But when you hold your truth calmly, when you set boundaries with grace, when you speak from a place of inner peace, people feel that, and they either rise to meet you or fall away. Both are wins. Influence in relationships isn't about control. It's about clarity. You're not trying to change people. You're modeling what it looks like to honor yourself. And that creates space for others to meet you at that level. Let's move into the most subtle form of influence, nonverbal energy. Before you say a word, people feel your presence. If your energy is scattered, your message won't land. If your energy is tense, your words will feel sharp, even if your tone is sweet. But if your energy is calm, open, and grounded, people will soften, they'll listen more deeply, they'll mirror your state. That's why self-regulation is the secret weapon of every great communicator. Control your breath. Slow your pace. Drop your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Be where your feet are. That stillness sends a message louder than any sentence ever could. Now let's talk about storytelling. Story is the bridge between logic and emotion. Facts tell, stories sell, because stories make people feel, and feelings are what drive change. When you want to influence, don't just explain your point, illustrate it. Share a moment, a struggle, a breakthrough, but keep it real. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with truth, even if it's messy. Especially if it's messy. Vulnerability builds trust. Trust builds influence. And influence builds impact. You don't have to be a master speaker to influence people. You don't need charisma. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest, present, anchored in service, and unafraid to let your message speak for itself, even if that means some won't hear it right away. Because the right people always do. Influence isn't about changing minds on command. It's about planting seeds in silence and letting them grow on their own time. The quieter your power, the deeper it roots. So speak with intention, hold your ground with grace, listen more than you talk, and trust that your energy is doing the work long after your words are gone. Chapter 11. The Unspoken Language. Mastering Nonverbal Communication. Some of the most powerful messages are the ones that are never spoken. Before a single word escapes the lips, the body has already said everything. The way the eyes shift, the shoulders drop, or the mouth tightens, these small unconscious cues tell a story, and for those who know how to read it, and more importantly how to use it, nonverbal communication becomes a superpower. Every interaction we have is layered. The words we choose sit on top, like icebergs, but beneath those words is the energy, the posture, the breath, the tone, all invisible to the eye, but deeply felt by the heart. You could say the right thing. You could have the right script, the right idea, the perfect response. But if your body says something else, your words lose weight. People may nod in agreement, but inside they hesitate. They feel something is off. That's because people don't just listen with their ears. They listen with their intuition, and body language is the language of intuition. In the world of communication mastery, words are only one instrument in the orchestra. Your face, your hands, your eyes, your breath, these are the strings and percussion, the rhythm and harmony. And when they're aligned, your message becomes music. When they're scattered, your message becomes noise. Let's start with posture. The way a person carries themselves changes how others receive them and how they feel about themselves. A slouched back, sunken chest, and eyes cast down signal doubt, but a lifted chest, straight spine, and steady gaze carry confidence. It's not about puffing yourself up to appear larger. It's about aligning your body to your message, grounded, present, honest. Posture is not just for standing. Even when sitting, the way you lean slightly forward or pull slightly back tells others how engaged you are. A speaker who leans in during a conversation signals interest and care. Someone who leans back with crossed arms signals resistance or withdrawal. None of this is inherently good or bad. But it must match the moment, and it must match your intent. Then comes the face. The face is a canvas, always moving, always revealing. The eyes, especially, are windows. People watch them constantly, often without realizing it. Darting eyes suggest nervousness or evasion. Locked, steady eye contact shows attentiveness, but too much becomes aggression. The art is in the balance. Even a soft blink can show emotional presence. Raised eyebrows show openness. Furrowed brows show concern or intensity. A half smile can melt resistance, while a smirk can ignite it. Mouth tension also matters. A relaxed jaw communicates comfort. A tight, clenched mouth often reflects withheld emotion. Most people never realize how much emotion they carry in the muscles around the mouth, but others sense it. Hands are storytellers too. They emphasize, underline, question, and celebrate. They help paint mental pictures for the listener. Speakers who gesture naturally often seem more authentic. They appear less rehearsed, but gestures must be fluid, not rigid or mechanical. Open hands, palms, visible, signal trust. Hidden hands or fidgeting suggest guardedness or discomfort. Again, the body speaks first, even before the voice begins. But tone, that's where things really shift. You can say the exact same sentence in 10 different tones, and it will mean 10 different things. I'm fine can mean relief, bitterness, exhaustion, dismissal, or sarcasm. It's not the words, it's the delivery. Tone holds emotion, and emotion holds meaning. Volume also matters. Speaking too loudly can feel abrasive. Too softly, and you seem unsure. The magic is in control. knowing when to raise your voice, not to dominate, but to emphasize, and knowing when to lower it, not to retreat, but to draw people closer. Pacing is another secret weapon. When you speak too fast, people feel rushed. It's harder to process your words. It signals nervousness. But when you slow down just enough, you create room. Room for reflection, room for presence, and most importantly, room for impact. Pauses are not empty, they are powerful. A well-placed pause can hold more weight than 100 words. It allows a message to sink in. It gives the listener a moment to feel. Silence, when used intentionally, builds gravity. That's what great communicators understand. They know how to hold a room without rushing it. They speak, then they wait. And in that waiting, something deeper happens. A connection is made. Clothing and grooming are nonverbal too. How someone presents themselves visually sends a message before they even speak. It's not about wearing expensive suits or following trends. It's about coherence. Does your visual presence match your message? Does it reflect care, precision, respect for the room you're in? When someone walks into a room dressed with intention, with posture that commands respect, with a face that holds warmth and eyes that listen, they don't need to say a word to be heard. That's the kind of presence people remember. But presence can't be faked. It's not about mimicking gestures or copying expressions. It comes from alignment, when what you feel, what you think, and what you say are all in sync. That's what creates authenticity, and authenticity is magnetic. When someone is fully themselves, not performing, not posturing, not pleasing, people lean in, because that kind of realness is rare. It's refreshing. It feels safe. Authenticity doesn't mean saying everything on your mind. It means choosing to show up real, calm, grounded, honest. And it shows in every breath, every blink, every pause. There's also cultural intelligence. Non-verbal cues vary around the world. What is considered confident in one culture might be considered arrogant in another. What feels respectful here might seem distant somewhere else. So mastering non-verbal communication also means observing, paying attention to the context, reading the air, adjusting without losing yourself. In a multicultural world, the most persuasive communicators are not just fluent in words, they are fluent in feelings. They know how to adapt without performing, how to respect differences without erasing their own truth. And then there's space, physical distance, proximity. In conversation, how close or far you stand affects how safe or threatened someone feels. Too close and it feels invasive. Too far and it feels disconnected. Again, it's about feeling the moment. Some conversations require closeness, others need respectful space. Skilled communicators don't just speak to words, they speak to energy. They sense when to lean in, when to step back, when to stand firm. Ultimately, non-verbal communication is not about tricks or tactics. It's about alignment. It's about being so deeply rooted in who you are that your body, your tone, your eyes and your words all carry the same truth. When someone speaks and every part of them speaks the same message, that's when people listen. That's when the room shifts. That's when trust is built, not through persuasion, but through presence. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to prove to be respected. You need to feel what you say. You need to mean what you do. And you need to be what you speak. When your body and your words say the same thing, people believe you. And when people believe you, you don't have to convince them. Nonverbal communication isn't extra, it's everything. Speak clearly, but move truthfully. Let your silence echo louder than noise. Let your eyes show kindness before your lips form a word. Let your breath hold steadiness. Let your posture declare dignity. And most of all, let your presence speak before your voice ever enters the room. Chapter 12. The Final Transformation. Living as a Master Communicator. There comes a moment in every person's journey where learning stops being something external and becomes a way of life. A moment where the knowledge gathered over time begins to take root, not just in the mind, but in the very way a person moves through the world. For those who master communication, that moment is subtle, but unmistakable. The voice no longer seeks validation, the presence no longer demands attention, the words no longer chase applause. Instead, everything becomes intentional, clear, powerful, and calm. By now, you've walked through every layer of what makes communication powerful: the internal roots of self-awareness and emotional clarity, the outward expressions through voice, tone, timing, and body, the invisible rhythms of trust, presence, and attention. And now, here at the end, there is only one lesson left. It's not about doing more, it's about becoming more. True mastery is not in technique, it's in presence. A master communicator doesn't speak to impress, they speak to connect. They don't persuade through clever lines, they persuade through truth. They don't dominate with volume, they lead with calm. Their words carry weight not because they are loud, but because they are aligned with who they are. And that alignment, that rare, unmistakable presence, is what people feel long after the conversation ends. In the real world, communication is not a speech. It's not a stage. It's not a script. It's a moment. Dozens of them. Every day. Moments with strangers, with friends, with lovers, with clients. And in each moment, the question is the same. Are you fully here, or just trying to be heard? A master communicator listens before they speak, not just to words, but to silence, to energy, to what's not being said. They don't rush to fill the space. They honor the space. And because of that, when they finally speak, it lands. Their conversations don't just exchange words. They shift rooms. They lower defenses. They raise understanding. People remember them. Not because they talked a lot, but because when they did speak, it mattered. They don't flinch from conflict, but they don't invite it either. They hold ground without holding grudges. They speak truth without slicing people down. They can deliver hard messages softly. They know when to lean in and when to step back. They use silence like a sculptor uses clay. They don't rush the moment. They let it breathe. They trust the process. And that's the difference. You don't have to win every conversation. You don't have to be the smartest in the room. You just have to be clear. Clear in your intent. Clear in your energy. Clear in your words. People don't follow perfection. They follow clarity. And clarity only comes from presence. You might be tempted to use these skills to impress, to sound smarter, smoother, sharper. But the real power of communication is not in being more. It's in being real. The most persuasive people are not those who overpower. They're the ones who understand, who make others feel seen, heard, and safe. That's what people respond to. Not tactics, not tricks, trust. And trust can't be faked. It is built moment by moment through consistency, honesty, and care. You already have the voice. You already have the presence. You already have the power. What you need is to get out of your own way. Don't speak to perform. Speak to connect. Don't listen to reply. Listen to understand. Don't show up with noise. Show up with clarity. When someone looks at you and sees that your eyes are steady, your words are grounded, and your energy is quiet but firm, they trust you. They don't even know why, but they do. That's the kind of presence that moves people. It doesn't come from pretending. It comes from practice, from pain, from patience, from failure, from choosing, again and again, to show up fully, even when you're nervous, even when you're unsure, even when your voice shakes, especially then. Because the more real you are, the more others will lean in. And when you finally stop performing, something incredible happens. People feel free to do the same. The world doesn't need more speakers, it needs more truth tellers. It needs people who can walk into a room and see others, not as competition, not as audience, but as fellow humans, with stories, with struggles, with hopes, with hurt. And when you speak to that, you are no longer just communicating, you are transforming. It doesn't matter where you came from, or how long it took. If you carry this presence into your conversations, your meetings, your relationships, everything will shift. You won't need to chase respect. It will follow you. You won't need to demand attention. It will find you. You won't need to manipulate trust. You will earn it, because you will have become the kind of person others want to follow, not because you're perfect, but because you're present. So go back to the beginning. Remember your voice. Reclaim your silence, and step forward, not as someone who knows it all, but as someone who is ready to live it all. Speak with love. Listen with grace. Hold space with strength. You don't need more words. You just need more presence. And that is the secret the world's most persuasive minds have always known. If you've come this far, know that something within you has already changed. You no longer just speak. You connect. You no longer just hear. You listen. You no longer just communicate. You lead. Let this be more than a book. Let it be a blueprint for how you live. A reminder that your words have weight and your presence has power. And if this audiobook has spoken to you, inspired you, or challenged you, share it. Help others find their voice too. Because when more people learn to communicate from truth, the world becomes less loud and more human. Make sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of your own growth. Your journey doesn't end here, it's just beginning.
Thank you for listening.
Stay grounded, stay clear, and always speak from your truth.